2025 was a great year for all sorts of genres, including horror, creature features, and superheroes. There was some really good stuff gracing our screens, both big and small, and it looks like 2026 is shaping up to be something similar. From the Godzilla Minus One Sequel and Season 2 of Legacy of Monsters to new Cloverfield movies and fresh Kaiju flicks, this year is going to be awesome for giant monster and kaiju lovers, and in this video, we're going to explore why that is with every major giant monster movie and series coming in 2026 and even beyond 2026. Let's begin, shall we? Number 1. Godzilla Minus Zero. Late 2026. What Takashi Yamazaki did with Godzilla when he brought him back in Godzilla Minus One was nothing short of extraordinary. Mr. Yamazaki put all his creativity and might into pulling the character back to what made it so terrifying in the first place. This film stripped away the excess, focused on the more dreadful aspects of Godzilla, and reminded us that the king works best when you treat him like he's a punishment instead of a movie franchise mascot. So now that the sequel has been officially revealed as Godzilla Minus Zero, the obvious question isn't whether another monster will appear. I mean, of course one will. The real question is which monster actually makes sense for the kind of story Yamazaki wants to tell. Now, a lot of fans are jumping straight to the big names like Mothra, King Ghidorah, and Mechagodzilla. Now, these are all solid choices, all icons, and all monsters we've seen reshaped so many times that there's very little mystery left in them. Even Yamazaki has already explored versions of Ghidorah and Mechagodzilla outside the films. They would work, sure, but they would also feel too safe for their own good, and Minus One was anything but safe. If you take a look at Yamazaki's sensibilities, the answer becomes more clear. The monster that works in Godzilla Minus Zero almost too well is Hedorah, the smog monster. First introduced in Godzilla vs. Hedorah, Hedorah has always been underestimated because of how strange he looks. A shifting mass of sludge with huge eyes doesn't sound intimidating on paper, but in practice, Hedorah nearly killed Godzilla, poisoned cities, and left a body count that rivals any kaiju in the franchise. More importantly, Hedorah means something. Godzilla has always symbolized nuclear trauma and human arrogance, while Hedorah represents pollution, environmental neglect, and humanity choking itself without needing a bomb. Yamazaki understands metaphor better than most modern blockbuster directors, and he's already said Hedorah fascinates him. At a Comic-Con panel in 2024, he spoke openly about wanting to revisit the character and imagining how modern effects would redefine how Hedorah moves and feels on screen. This is important because Yamazaki's Godzilla is all about sharp motion and sudden violence. His creature doesn't lumber, he snaps. Hedorah, by contrast, is fluid, corrosive, and invasive. Visually, the clash between these two bigwigs writes itself, and with Yamazaki serving once again as writer, director, and VFX supervisor, the same role that earned him an Academy Award for Godzilla Minus One, the potential feels enormous. That film reportedly cost around $15 million and still won Best Visual Effects while earning $116 million worldwide. Yamazaki has already proven that budget limits don't limit imagination. Toho clearly agrees, which is why Toho Studios announced Godzilla Minus Zero during Godzilla Day in Tokyo, confirming Yamazaki's return and revealing that he even illustrated the teaser artwork himself. Production is underway with filming planned across Norway and New Zealand, and the studio is aiming for a late 2026 release. This also fits the franchise's larger history. Godzilla has endured for over 70 years, beginning with Godzilla and continuing through 38 or so films, officially recognized as the longest-running film series in history. Each era reflects its anxieties, and right now, environmental collapse feels far more immediate than alien invasions or robot doubles.
Images here in the studio. For those of you just joining us, Lower Manhattan is in an absolute state of...
2. Cloverfield Sequel. TBA. Back in 2022, Paramount revealed that a new Cloverfield film was officially in the works. Babak Anvari, the filmmaker behind Under the Shadow and Wounds, signed on to direct what was described as the first true sequel to Cloverfield. Then, as it sometimes happens, the updates stopped coming in and there was enough silence to make people wonder whether the project had slipped into the same void as so many half-born franchise ideas. Then, the South by Southwest Film Festival happened, where Anvari premiered his latest film, Hollow Road. On the red carpet, he finally broke the silence around the upcoming Cloverfield sequel, even if only slightly. Asked about the status of Cloverfield 2, Anvari admitted he couldn't share details, mainly because the team remains intensely secretive. What he could say was that the project still lives, and whatever form it takes, his hope is that audiences get, quote-unquote, something amazing. It's not much, but it's enough to confirm that the sequel hasn't vanished. That secrecy, though, has been a constant with the franchise. Cloverfield arrived in 2008 as a found footage shock to the system, but ended up dropping this massive creature into the middle of New York City, and then it let panic do the rest. The film followed 6 people as the city collapsed around them, with a cast that included Michael Stahl-David, Odette Justman, Mike Vogel, Jessica Lucas, T.J. Miller, Lizzie Kaplan, and Ben Feldman. Next thing we know, the film series basically turned into a strange experiment. 10 Cloverfield Lane was great if you see it as a standalone tense bunker thriller. The Cloverfield paradox tried to stitch everything together through a multiverse explanation, but many people weren't exactly pleased with what it had to offer. What happened was that this strange approach created a franchise that was primarily defined more by implication of events than through thoughtful continuity. The idea that a rupture in space-time scattered monsters across timelines became the loose glue holding everything together. It worked when the story stayed an intimate one, but absolutely struggled to walk, let alone fly, when it came to the mythology and deep lore. This is why this new sequel seems important. This time, the plan is to connect it with the original film, which may seem like a safe bet, and we're sure many people agree that this is the correct way to go. Anvari seems like a good choice for this new outlook that Paramount seems to be considering. His work thrives on atmosphere, fear rooted in personal space, and fear that creeps slowly inside of you, growing like a feature-length fever dream. You pair that with Cloverfield, and it feels like a match made in some alien heaven or hell. The script comes from Joe Barton, while J.J. Abrams returns as a producer through Bad Robot, and he's joined by Hannah Minghella and John Cohen. Executive producers include Brian Burke, Matt Reeves, and Drew Goddard. Furthermore, the franchise even extended into print with Cloverfield/Kishin, which explored the days before the original attack through the eyes of 2 students. 17 years after the monster first hit Manhattan, Cloverfield still holds power because it knew when to stop explaining. If Anvari keeps that instinct intact, this sequel could finally deliver what the franchise, and we, deserve, and that's anything but a puzzle box or some sort of a multiversal detour. 3. Godzilla x Kong Supernova, March 26, 2027. By now, it's clear that the MonsterVerse has no intention of slowing down. After Godzilla x Kong, the new empire tore through theaters in March 2024 and became the highest-grossing entry in the franchise at nearly $572 million worldwide. As expected, a sequel announcement followed in May of 2024, and by June, the next chapter started taking shape. Adam Wingard, who was behind both Godzilla vs. Kong and the New Empire, was forced to step aside due to scheduling conflicts and commitments elsewhere, but the door stayed open for his return someday. In the meantime, the baton passed to Grant Sputore, best known for I Am Mother, which obviously led to a paradigm shift in tone. The next film is going to be called Godzilla x Kong Supernova, and production began in April 2025 at Village Roadshow Studios in Australia, and the release date has been set as March 26, 2027. We also have cast details already, and if everything goes well, we'll have Caitlin Deaver leading the human side of the story, and she'd be joined by Dan Stevens, who returns as Trapper Beasley, and then there's Jack O'Connell, Delroy Lindo, Matthew Modine as a general, Alicia Debnam Carey, and even Sam Neill. If you ask us, this cast tells us that the filmmakers took past criticism about thin human arcs seriously and decided to do something about it. In fact, even the creative team looks promising. Dan Mindell would serve as the cinematographer, while Stefan Deschamps would take care of the production design. Kelly Port returns for visual effects, and Henry Jackman is the composer. David Callahan, who worked on early drafts of Godzilla from 2014, has been brought back to write the screenplay along with Michael Lloyd Green. Callahan's name is important here because his writing credits are now specifically linked to characters from Godzilla and Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. Oh yeah, Space Godzilla appears to be the real deal here. The Supernova title was speculated even before it was revealed back in May 2025, and thankfully, the Writers Guild listings later pushed things from theory to near certainty. Space Godzilla has only appeared once in live action, and bringing him into the monsterverse is definitely a calculated risk. He's cosmic, strange, and visually aggressive in a way few kaiju are. More importantly, he represents a shift away from Earth-bound rivalries and Hollow Earth politics, for lack of a better term, towards something bigger and colder and meaner. How he fits into the franchise remains the real question though, and this is where things get interesting. The Monsterverse loves reframing old Toho ideas through its own mythology rather than copying them outright. In Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, the monster overwhelmed Godzilla until humans deployed Moguera, whose job was to destroy the crystal growths on Space Godzilla's shoulders, the source of his power. Once those fell, Godzilla could finish the fight. Translate that to supernova and the shape becomes obvious. Kong replaces Moguera. He isn't a weapon built by humans, but he fills the same role as the tactician. The Monsterverse already treats Kong as the problem solver. A 2-on-1 clash where Kong identifies Space Godzilla's weakness while Godzilla delivers the final blow feels almost inevitable. There's also the deeper lore angle. Early Godzilla vs. Kong concept art once hinted at a winged Godzilla figure tied to an ancient Titan war. Later material clarified that Godzilla himself, along with Scar King, drove that conflict. Still, nothing fully explains why the Godzilla and Kong species clashed so violently in the first place. Supernova could reopen that door without undoing what's already established. Space Godzilla doesn't need to be ancient, but he could be the catalyst that turned rivalry into war. Then there's the concept of extraterrestrial hierarchy. King Ghidorah arrived from space and briefly ruled Earth's titans. If Supernova reveals that Ghidorah fled from something worse when he came to Earth, Space Godzilla instantly becomes the franchise's apex threat without extra exposition or competition for that matter. There's also the biological angle. The new empire introduced Godzilla Evolved, a form born from prolonged exposure to radiation-rich crystals. It reframed how Godzilla adapts and mutates. Apply that logic backwards, and Space Godzilla could be a corrupted member of the same species, altered by alien matter rather than terrestrial radiation. This would keep the story Godzilla-centric instead of drifting into pure sci-fi spectacle. Lastly, Space Godzilla could also merge with Orga from Godzilla 2000. An alien organism that seeks Godzilla, absorbs his DNA, and reshapes itself into something stronger. This would even satisfy the Monsterverse's love for hybrid threats while bringing the story from Hollow Earth to open skies. If the new empire proved the Monsterverse could lean into spectacle without messing around, we will have nothing to complain about. Number 4. Kaiju Island of Fire 2026. I'll say it, there's something really reassuring about a kaiju film that doesn't try to reinvent the wheel, sell you a cinematic universe on day one, or wink at the audience every 5 minutes like it's done something novel. Kaiju Island of Fire feels cut from that older cloth. More details that come to light, clearer its intent becomes. This is a straight-faced monster movie born out of fandom, craft, respect for the genre's roots. The movie is currently in production in Japan and is ready for a 2026 release. As far as the premise is concerned, we got ourselves a combined military and science task force heads to an ancient Japanese island where members of a construction crew vanish while building a new military base. They find that the island has turned hostile, thanks in part to the volcanic terrain and geological instability. The real reason is a terrifying creature that the place hides. What sells this even more is who's behind the camera. Andrew L. Phillips writes and directs this one. He spent years as a Hollywood stuntman on films like World War Z, The Dark Knight Rises, and Captain America: The First Avenger. That kind of CV usually translates to a filmmaker who understands scale, physical danger, and how bodies move through destructive spaces. For instance, let's take a look at Chad Stahelski. That guy served as the stunt double for people like Keanu Reeves in the Matrix movies, Brandon Lee in The Crow, and all. Chad went on to make John Wick movies. See what we mean when we say Andrew L. Phillips's attachment to this new project is important? Moving on, production comes from North Star Pictures JP, Avery Guerra, and James H. Christie producing. Film will be the first chapter of a planned giant monster franchise. In what seems like a love letter of a cast to kaiju history, we've got Robert Scott Field, Chuck Wilson, and Kent Gilbert reuniting after their work in Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. We also have Yoshiro Uchida, best known as Toshio Sakurai from Gamera, the Giant Monster. After quitting acting for music and later reappearing in projects like The Great Buddha Arrival and Nezura 1964, His role will be much appreciated by long-term fans. Enough about the cast though. Teaser art and posters are already revealing a volcanic kaiju, something that appeals to your more primal senses, looking overtly flashy or forced. Teaser trailer debuted exclusively at G-Fest in Chicago, limited lobby cards for attendees, so not a lot is yet known. Let's see what happens next. However, we gotta say, we like that Kaiju Island of Fire knows exactly what it is, and it isn't chasing trends trying to outdo Hollywood budgets. 5. Monarch, Legacy of Monsters 2, February 27th, 2026. While Warner Bros. Is going all guns blazing into the MonsterVerse movies, Apple TV isn't easing off the gas with Monarch, Legacy of Monsters. From what we can tell from the newly released 2026 trailer, it seems that Season 2 means business. After months of anticipation, finally have a proper look at what comes next, feels bigger, darker, far more consequential. The second season arrives on February 27th, 2026, 10 episodes dropping weekly until May 1st, and yes, Kurt Russell is officially back alongside Wyatt Russell, Anna Sawai, Kiersey Clemens, Ren Watanabe, Mari Yamamoto, Joe Tippett, and Anders Holm. Season 1 laid the groundwork carefully. Two siblings chase the truth behind their family's connection to Monarch, the secretive organization at the center of the Monsterverse. Their search pulls them into a long-running mystery linked to Army Officer Lee Shaw, played by both Kurt and Wyatt Russell, across two timelines. One timeline runs in the 1950s, the other decades later, Monarch facing exposure because of what Shaw knows. It was a smart approach, grounded in people before spectacle, which made the monsters feel heavier when they did appear. Season 2 picks up with everything on the line. Monarch's future hangs by a thread, the ripple effects of old decisions are finally hitting full force. The story pulls characters back to Kong's Skull Island, kinda like a reckoning. From there, the narrative expands again, introduces a mysterious coastal village where a new titan rises from the sea. What we like most here is how the show keeps leaning into the consequences of past decisions. Behind the scenes, Legendary Television continues to anchor the series, with Joby Harold and Tori Tunnell producing through Safehouse Pictures. Chris Black returns as showrunner for Season 2, joined by Jen Roskind, Matt Shackman, Andrew Colville, and Lawrence Trilling, who also directs 4 episodes. Colville writes 2 episodes as well, which helps keep the voice consistent. Toho remains closely involved, with Hiro Matsuoka and Takimasa Arita exec-producing, reinforcing that this series still treats Godzilla's legacy with respect. Apple TV's multi-series deal with Legendary also stays in place, which explains the confidence behind this rollout. The 2026 trailer doesn't reveal everything, and needless to say, the mystery it creates works in its favor. We get flashes of monster action, hints of political pressure, and enough variables to remind us that Monarch exists in a world that can collapse at any moment.
This was a circular dispersal.
Fire in the hole.
6. Young Lee Shaw Untitled Spin-off Series. So as we just explained, Apple TV and Legendary clearly like what they've built with Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, because they're not slowing down at all. MonsterVerse is officially expanding again, this time with a new prequel series centered on a younger version of Lee Shaw, once more by Wyatt Russell. If Season 1 of Monarch was about peeling back layers, this spin-off goes straight for the roots. The new series focuses on Lee Shaw in 1984, long before the modern-day fallout we've already seen. Shaw is an American operative sent on a covert mission behind enemy lines with one clear objective: stop the Soviets from unleashing a titan powerful enough to shift the balance of the Cold War. That premise alone tells you that this won't be a casual side story. This is geopolitics colliding with kaiju mythology, feels very on brand for where the Monsterverse has quietly headed on television. The creative spine seems like it's got some balls here, maybe not, because anatomically that doesn't sound healthy or beneficial, but regardless, we got Joby Harold as the showrunner. Harold has signed an overall deal with Legendary Entertainment, which makes him in charge of overseeing the entire Monsterverse slate on Apple TV. It looks like they really do trust him with long-term planning, think this is good for consistency across stories, timelines, and titans. Harold already serves as an executive producer on Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, which, as we just explained, turns for Season 2 in February. So this new spin-off will be something of an extension to Legacy of Monsters. Wyatt Russell is also an executive producer. Dish producing lineup stays stacked, with Safehouse Pictures involved, continued cooperation from Toho Co. Limited, owners of Godzilla. That ongoing Toho partnership remains a quiet, crucial reason this franchise hasn't lost its identity. From our perspective, this makes sense. Monarch proved that the Monsterverse works best when it treats humans as more than reaction shots between monster fights. Lee Shaw is already one of its strongest anchors, and dropping him into the pressure cooker of the Cold War gives the character sharper edges. Espionage, secrecy, moral compromise fit this universe better than endless city leveling. This series will also find its place with ease among Legendary's larger timeline. The Monsterverse began with Godzilla in 2014, grew through Kong Skull Island and Godzilla King of the Monsters, Godzilla vs. Kong, and more recently, Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire. Next up is Godzilla x Kong Supernova in 2027. Across films and shows, the franchise has crossed $2.5 billion globally, and Apple's multi-series deal makes it clear that this isn't a one-off experiment. For Wyatt Russell, this is another high-profile chapter alongside upcoming work like Steven Spielberg's next film, major franchise roles elsewhere. The Monsterverse, it's proof that Apple TV and Legendary want new depth. A focused prequel about a single man trying to stop a titan from reshaping history seems like a great way to do that. That's all we got for you this time, but if you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons. Those 2 small clicks from you will help us tremendously in bringing you more of these marvelous videos. Thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.